Rocksteady confirms it's pulling the plug on new Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League content after Season 4. Wow. Rocksteady is pulling the plug on new content for Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, with the developer announcing its plans to end support for the troubled online game in January 2025, which will include the release of an offline mode and a new character called Deathstroke. Suicide Squad's story will remain playable via offline mode. Elsewhere, Rocksteady and Suicide Squad will remain available for purchase. Oh, good. A difficult release for Suicide Squad. Yeah, I wonder why. I wonder why it was difficult. I want to remind you guys that Suicide Squad was delayed because Warner Brothers knew it was garbage. They knew it sucked so much dick that they had to delay the game even before it was released the first time. Let's see how many people are playing it. So the game it went on sale, I'm not even kidding you, for $3. $3. And even then, it died. A $5 deluxe edition. That's a hamburger. And these people weren't hungry. Suicide Squad kills the looter shooter trend.
Yeah, looking forward to killing the Justice League and all, but
what's this?
Well, you know, these guns are a bit shit.
For me, the disappointment of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League isn't just about its quality. It's about what it's not as much as about what it is. There's very little of what made developer Rocksteady's games so great in the past.
Yeah.
Near unparalleled superhero power trips that sit alongside Insomniac's critically acclaimed Spider-Man series. It's also the latest in...
Well, it's also Harley Quinn was hot in the last one, and she's not hot in this one. People got the wrong idea about Harley Quinn. They thought that people liked her as a character. People didn't like Harley Quinn, they liked Margot Robbie. So if you're adding Harley Quinn into the game and you're not making her hot, then you're making a mistake. Like, what are we talking about? How is this even a conversation?
Frustratingly long line of beloved single-player championing studios delving into unwelcoming, loot-infested live service waters.
Nobody ever believes things can get this bad until it happens.
Yeah,
it's been a perilous leap for many to take, with success limited to very few not called Bungie. And I hope we're now at the end of this detrimental trend that's plagued so many.
I don't think that we're going to be at the end of it, to be honest, because a lot of people want to have their live service game because that's what's going to cause them to make a lot of money in the long term. They're willing to invest a ton of time and money into it just to have that happen. I like looter shooters. I wish there were good ones. Well, just play Once Human. Once Human's a pretty good game. I mean, First Descendant's pretty fun. It can get repetitive after a while, but yeah. Yeah, people like Warframe.
In recent years, BioWare abandoned the comfort of its trademark deep RPG writing in favor of Anthem's cold, hollow, RNG-fueled exos.
That's crazy. So they made Anthem and then they made Dragon Age? Uh-oh. That's not looking good.
It was the first real notable example of this happening. A studio ripping apart from its roots to chase high-risk trends popularized by the likes of Destiny. BioWare veteran James Olin told Rock Paper Shotgun that Anthem was the ultimate expression of that. It got away from everything. It's kind of like the anti-BioWare game. There have since been others chasing these online looter-shooter trends that have
I've always had the viewpoint that I think that a good game studio can make almost any kind of a game. Like Blizzard, for example, never made an FPS, and then they changed the entire FPS landscape with Overwatch. Like Riot has made tons of really amazing games. Like, the fact is that a good studio, Capcom, right, really great studios are going to be able to do this correctly, and bad studios won't be able to do anything. And I think really the fact that BioWare did Anthem and they failed at Anthem, and then they went back to their roots with Dragon Age and they failed with Dragon Age 2, maybe the problem isn't live service, maybe the problem is BioWare. I mean, really. Because if like, you know, this is just, it's just like logic, right? Because like if you look at it logically, so the game failed because BioWare was doing what they didn't understand, okay? That's the premise. That they're chasing trends and they weren't doing what they're good at. So then you would logically assume that when they are not chasing trends and they do what they are good at, they would be successful. They're not. So that clearly wasn't the problem. There it is. Sorry.
Rapidly gone out of fashion with each passing year. Arcane brought none of its best-in-class level design to the empty vampiric streets of Redfall. Crystal Dynamics
They didn't do it with Dragon Age either.
promised much in
better,
its
but not
Marvel's
good.
Avengers campaign, but lost its way completely regarding its live service offerings. And most recently,
Well, it's like nobody told them that they have to make this. Like, if you just look at the visuals for this, are we really going to talk about how live service is bad, or can we just talk about how terrible this fucking spell effect is? You can't even see what's happening. Like, I hope this game has an epilepsy warning when you log in, because you're going to go fucking blind looking at it. So a lot of these problems with games like this are just primarily based off of bad design and bad programming and bad decisions that were made creatively. There's no real, like, I don't think that there's no law that says that you can't make a live service looter shooter game and have it be good. But I mean, if you do this, it's going to be bad no matter what.
live service offerings. And most recently, Rocksteady traded in their expertly designed Gotham for
terrible.
a shallow metropolis. Suicide Squad's main problem isn't in its art direction, character design, or storytelling, although mileage may vary on that last one. These are all things we've come to expect and enjoy from Rocksteady, masters of their craft when it comes to creating superhero open worlds. But while it has largely delivered on that trio of creative disciplines, the studio's other notable strengths
What clearly didn't deliver on it because it failed. The game was massively unsuccessful. Everybody was unhappy with the campaign. They thought the campaign disrespected the original voice actor of Batman, or at least one of them. I think it was James Conroy. People hated this. They hated everything about the game.
best-in-class campaign design, genre-leading combat system.
People hated the campaign. There were 2 points in the campaign that people really didn't like. They didn't like the fact that, I mean, I would say spoilers, but nobody cares. Batman gets killed in the end, and it's done in a very, just like fucking shitty way. And then they also didn't like that Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn had some sort of implied lesbian relationship, and then Poison Ivy gets reincarnated into being a prepubescent girl, and then Harley Quinn is asking her questions about if she remembers anything. Like, both of these things are really weird, and if you want to add this into the game, it's going to make people uncomfortable. No, I'm serious. Like, literally go and look it up. Like, I made a video about it when it came out. And so, yikes, it's a big yikes. It was fucking weird. Like, let's not go and pretend like the campaign was great and people liked it. People hated the campaign.
And engaging open worlds are the areas in which Suicide Squad has stumbled. And that faltering is rooted in the pivot to creating a long-time content delivery machine, aka a live service shooter. In the 9 years it has taken the London-based studio to finish work on Kill the Justice League, numerous examples of exactly the same kind of pivot project failing have come and gone. Yet, no change.
I think here's the writing between the lines, in my opinion. Studios fail when they go to live service looter shooter games, not because live service looter shooter games are bad or they can't succeed, but because the drive to go there is driven by profit and not by creativity. So a lot of these studios, they're chasing these trends because they think these trends will make them money. They're not chasing these trends because they think this is a good way to deliver an experience to their audience. They're not chasing the trend because they think that, oh, well, this is going to make the game better. No, they're doing it because they have no creative goal themselves and they're trying to latch on to trends. I'll give you an example, a parallel to this you guys can maybe relate to a little bit, is that on Twitch, have you ever seen somebody who tries to play the new big popular game, but it's very clear that they have no real interest or, involvement in it, so they just end up kind of losing viewers because of it? Right? It's like, you? What do you mean, me? Not me. I mean, I had 200,000 viewers playing PoE. Like, I always farm the new games, and I'm usually top of directory by a mile. But I'm saying, like, people that end up going and losing a massive amount of viewers for it. So, yeah. Like, that's what I'm kind of saying, is, like, this is what happens, right? Is that when you go after something, you see kind of like what my point is with this. Sorry, I think I'm not explaining it in a good way. Hopefully you guys still understand what I'm saying. Is that it's not the genre, it's the impulse behind the drive to go to the genre that is the actual problem. And it indicates a lack of creativity and a lack of, like, a creative North Star.
of direction has seemingly been plotted.
That's what I
That's
think.
likely because of the weight of the AAA machine. Like a heavy cruise liner, it can be difficult to change the course of all those resources and staff when the journey begins. But the result of that is a wholly incongruous mess of a looter shooter where bland gunplay makes neither canonical sense nor an engaging gameplay loop.
Nobody said that you have to have those colors and spell effects in the game. I really don't like how people try to turn this into, oh, well, the reason why they failed is because they tried to pursue like live service or something. No, nobody told you had to program the spell effects and the UI to look like that. You did that yourself, and it looks terrible. Like, it's just everything about the game is unappealing. It failed because it sucks? Yeah, exactly. It's like it's failure all the way down, right? It's failure at like a structural level with like the type of game it is. It's failure at a narrative level with the way the story was told. It's failure at a gameplay level, and it's failure at a visual level. It's failure everywhere. It's not like, oh, if it wasn't live service, this game would be good. It would be terrible. People would hate it if it wasn't live service too.
Oh, this'll make my boomerangs jealous. Sorry, ladies.
Gear progression and how it intertwines with talent trees and class abilities is a delicate balance that is by no means easy to achieve. The Borderlands series has historically done it very well, and while the Pandora Gunfests do have significant stories told throughout, you always get the feeling that developer Gearbox's focus is on making the most outrageous.
Well, it's also the characters are appealing. Like, this character
always
is cool.
get the feeling that developer
this guy's awesome. Look at this guy's. Look at his design. This character looks fucking cool. Like,
Gearbox's focus is on making the most outrageous and fun arsenal to play with as possible. But Borderlands games are, of course,
okay, compared to Suicide Squad, he does.
Not live service. Tackling that added demand of a long life of ever-expanding content adds a whole
7 surrounded by 4s is a 9.
New weight on top of all that to balance. A more pertinent example then might be Diablo, which has achieved this as successfully as anyone over the years thanks to Blizzard, a studio whose very DNA is built around online multiplayer experiences. For almost 30 years, the developers refined a gameplay loop completely centered on chasing that next piece of loot. That desire to want to come back repeatedly and grind for the next piece of gear is key to the success of a loot-based game, and is what I look for over all else in the genre. Strike gold with that, and even games that possess just a sliver of Rocksteady's storytelling chops, such as 2021's Outriders, can keep me engaged enough to keep playing thanks to fun weapons and abilities.
I think the best example of this is actually the first Descendant. I hate to tell you guys this, I don't want to even admit this, but I actually paid attention to the story in the first Descendant, and I feel like I would have gained more IQ points by getting a lobotomy. I can't believe it. Yeah, it has a story, it does. The cinematics were awesome, but the story was so ass. I know, it really was.
Note combat is a common thread between all of these recent failed experiments.
For sure.
Redfall's selection of identikit weapons didn't offer anywhere near the sort of malleable approaches that Dishonored's blades and powers brought to encounters. Although Marvel's Avengers heroes did each have a set of abilities intrinsically linked to their character, the rote defend and capture objective scenarios you were placed in.
I remember when this game paid every streamer, like, it paid streamers like hundreds, probably tens of millions of dollars to play it. And then as soon as everybody got done playing it, they immediately stopped playing the game. It's just amazing.
Offered limited thrills, and Anthem's mission design was near non-existent, as you jetted around its open world searching for any semblance of BioWare's famous quest writing. Rocksteady created one of the most influential combat systems in the form
Look at the style of this game, right? And this is what I'm saying, right? Is this game came out like 10 years ago or something like that. And the quality of this is just incredible. Look at the style, the graphics. There's nothing that's like overly flashy. It's not giving you a seizure. 2011, 2015, that's disgusting. How does this happen?
Batman Arkham's counter-based melee flow, and to step away from this and create a gun-based looter-shooter was a bold move. Sadly, it just didn't pay off. Each gun feels fundamentally very similar to the next and last, with interesting perks and alternate fires kept at a real premium. The least you'd expect from a looter-shooter is to have interesting loot to shoot with, but the focus on that in Suicide Squad just isn't quite there.
You're making guns for us now, Bird Brain.
It's your lucky day.
I'm all for developers.
I think that a lot of developers don't know how to make games that have interesting like combat decisions. I think that's why roguelikes. So I think a lot of developers should look at roguelikes and look at different builds people make in roguelikes and view those as power fantasies that they should develop into archetypes inside of a broader game. Like, look at what the baseline of that is, and then expand out from there. Like a garlic build, right? Or like, for example, like Bunny, for example, in First Descendant is really, really fun to play.
Trying something new in an attempt to avoid things becoming stale. But successful new beginnings are rooted in a recognition of historic strengths. I wish Rocksteady had used its previous top-tier melee combat, dense open world, and thrilling storytelling experience as a base, rather than shifting to what
they had an open world, they had the storytelling, and they had melee combat. It was just all trash. What are we talking about?
Is an almost entirely different development format. This challenge is something, to its credit,
really nice.
that Sony has managed well with PlayStation Studios. Time is given to each creative team to make the project they want to make, with story-driven single-player games remaining a dominant focus. Naughty Dog has become the standard bearer for this philosophy in the years that Rocksteady spent making Kill the Justice League. But that isn't to say they didn't attempt to branch out to multiplayer in that time either, with Sony recently cancelling a stuttering The Last of Us online project. We'll never know how this would have turned out, but if recent history has told us anything, it's that halting development before it rumbles on for years might have been the right move by PlayStation.
Sometimes some babies deserve to get aborted. And every time that I hear about a game being canceled, I usually assume that it's the right decision.
Something confirmed by Naughty Dog itself in the statement announcing the cancellation. The studio said, "To release and support The Last of Us Online, we'd have to put all our studio resources behind supporting post-launch content for years to come, severely impacting development on future single-player games."
Yeah, it's a bad
so,
idea.
we had two paths in front of us, becoming a solely live service game studio, or continue to focus on single-player narrative games that have defined Naughty Dog's heritage.
Absolutely W statement. And this is what I'm saying, right? Is that they didn't do it. You listen to like, what's the writing between the lines there? They said, we could do this, but we don't want to do this. We're not going to chase a trend. We're going to do what we're good at. And that's what we're going to do. That's what it's going to be. Yeah, we're going to focus on what we're good at. Exactly. I still hate Neil Druckmann. I think he's so pretentious. He totally is. But that statement is accurate. It's good to read. And if Neil wants to keep making pretentious games and pretending to be like a Hollywood director, that's seemingly probably what he's best at. I bet he's probably better at that than doing looter shooter games that are live service. So keep doing it.
That's not to say that risks can't and shouldn't be taken though, if approached in a sensible and measured manner. Interesting results can come from developers stepping out of their comfort zone and trying something new and dipping their toes into the water before diving head first. In regards to PlayStation, Sucker Punch's Legends expansion to 2020's Ghost of Tsushima was a well-constructed online co-op offering rooted in its fundamentally exciting sword combat. The experience was scaled appropriately for an experimental DLC, offering a small but rewarding pool of gear for progressing through missions, which culminated in a challenging multi-part raid full of memorable art direction. The key though was that this focus was narrow, adding a handful of hours of multiplayer fun onto an already solid single player base.
I feel like that's kind of like what they did with like maybe Dragon in Dragon's Dogma 1, where they had like some like form of like pseudo asynchronous gameplay, and like there was some degree of grouping, but not really. I feel like this is something that's really cool for people that are really big fans of the game, but I don't really see this. I mean, I look at this gameplay, and if it's like any PvP or anything like that, it just looks like a worse version of Naraka Blade Point, right? Let's be honest. Devs had some fun. Yeah. If it's a fun thing to add in, I'm sure some people would like it.
Still want to see more Sucker Punch single-player stories, but this smaller scoped experiment has at least given me confidence that they can make the looter-shooter live service jump where others have fallen. Maybe it would have been wise for Rocksteady to
mean, just look, dude, this is what's so shocking to me about this. Is like, if I take a step back, looks fucking amazing. Oh my god. I'm sorry, but like, I bet that the people that made this didn't make Suicide Squad. It's a Ship of Theseus situation. There's no way they did. Well, I'm saying that a lot of the people, what I'm saying is that studios, this is a big issue that studios have, is that sometimes there's like a creative like brain drain, effectively, where a lot of the creative head people and the people that are like really defining these experiences leave the studio and they go somewhere else. It's hard to say, right? I mean, I can't be sure about that, but I think you see that happen with a number of studios where it's like, this studio used to be known as like the fucking gold standard and now it's the brown standard.
They did test out some of Suicide Squad's online components in an Arkham Knight expansion, before fully implementing those ideas 9 years later. Unfortunately, it's still unclear to see how far those who leaped have fallen. It can't be a coincidence though, that these studios all find themselves reverting back to what made them such respected names in the single player space. BioWare is hoping to recapture—
I just think it's such cope to assume that Rocksteady is going to turn around and, just make some amazing single player game after this. I can't see how a person would logically come to that conclusion. It doesn't make any sense to me.
To that story-driven RPG magic with new Dragon Age and Mass Effect games in development. Arcane has light at the end of the tunnel with Marvel's Blade being helmed by their Leon studio, a stealth combat game that hopes are high for. Crystal Dynamics finds its—
Blade could be fucking amazing. Like, if Blade could be in between Splinter Cell and Devil May Cry, I don't know, that probably is maybe not the best combination, but Devil May Cry and something else that's a little bit more tactile, that could be really cool. That could be fucking amazing.
Under the parasitic control of Embracer Group, who has seemingly done nothing but cancel projects and lay off staff since making their huge financial gamble. I hope the Tomb Raider studio manages to survive and thrive again. I sympathise with all these developers, none of whom set out to make games that would go on to be considered dead on arrival. Instead, eyes need to be turned towards those making the decisions, whether these be studio heads, publishers, or other executives, on what type of games these studios should make.
There's no executive that's sitting there that's telling them that you have to create this extremely annoying, really obnoxious and like weird to look at red style like surrounding thing on a character. Like, at a certain point, you have to look at the individual decisions that are happening at like the second-to-second basis. I don't think that it's fair to say that the problem is all the executives and all of the people that are doing the programming are right about everything and doing everything correctly. I think that when you have this big of a failure, you have failure all the way down. I think this is a systematic issue that affects every single level of development. Now, the truth is that as leadership, it might not be their fault, but it's their responsibility. They're the ones who should get fired. And then they should bring in new people to take that responsibility. And then if there are people that are below them that are not fulfilling it, fire them and replace them with somebody who's good. So yeah, your Umbra programmers only do what's given as a requirement. Sure. Think about how delusional this sounds. The game would be great, except for the people that are programming it are being told to do everything wrong. And the people who are programming it would do everything right, but they're accidentally doing everything wrong because they're being told to. No, it's mistakes all the way down. Like every experience that I've ever seen in my life with any sort of like a systematic failure, it's always all the way down.
studios should make. The list of previously mentioned failures to launch should be the wake-up call needed to stop mismanaging talent and siphoning their passion into projects that benefit neither the developers' skill sets nor the players' ultimate enjoyment. It's a lesson that Warner Bros. Seemingly never learned with Kill the Justice League, although hopefully one they've now learned, considering Suicide Squad's questionable success comes not long after the news that WB's own Hogwarts Legacy, a single-player open-world story-driven game, happened to be 2023's biggest selling game.
I don't really think that that's a lot that you can say. Like, Hogwarts Legacy, I think, was a solid 8 out of 10 game, but it's capitalizing on one of the most popular IPs of all time, and I think it's doing so at the exact right time, where pretty much everybody who grew up watching Harry Potter has disposable income to buy a Harry Potter game. And so, like, if you really look at the success of Hogwarts Legacy, yeah, it was a great game, amazing game, but, I mean, that's it, right? I mean, a lot of the... there's a lot of things about the game that were not very good. Like, for example, like all the gameplay exploration, the monster density and monster variety, the bosses in the game. There were a lot of things that were just very, very below average with that game. I loved it. No, I thought it was a really fun game too. I played the entire thing, but I also have to admit that it's not perfect. It just needed to not be complete shit. Yeah. No, I think that the one thing the Hogwarts Legacy did extremely well is that it was it was made for fans of Harry Potter. Like, the graphics and the design of Hogwarts specifically, fucking amazing.
Too soon to say what's next for Rocksteady, which still has the first steps of its live service roadmap to make when Joker arrives as a playable character next month. Suicide Squad could buck the trend, becoming a huge success that grows strong as the months and years go on. I have my doubts though. I just hope it does well enough that a studio home to so much single player talent is allowed to spread its bat wings again. For more on Suicide Squad, check out our review, and for everything else Kill the Justice League, stick with IGN.
I just think that it's crazy to think that the reason why this happened is because it was live service. The reason why it happened is because they were so creatively bankrupt, they didn't have their own direction, and they choose to lock on to a trend instead of embracing what they're good at, and they created garbage. A garbage game with a garbage story, with garbage gameplay, with garbage graphics, and guess what? Now it's in the garbage. That's what happens. So that's the way I see it. Journalist guys in co-op? Yeah, I mean, that's just how I see it. Yeah, so yeah, Suicide Squad is dead. The game is finally dead, and it killed itself. Big surprise. Please watch Ko's thoughts on Dragon Age. I know, he said pretty much the same thing. Will I read the PoE2 patch notes? Oh yeah, I'll look at all that stuff. Stupid ass logic, if you got bridge builders and tell them to build computers, is it their fault that the computer sucks? Well, they're not building, it's not building a bridge and building a computer. Like, spell effects and story design is irrelevant. Like, or sorry, it is the same. Like, you're writing a story in the same way. You're designing spell effects in the same way. There's no reason that it had to be designed with those color schemes. There's no reason it had to have that story. That's like saying, like, okay, if somebody's used to cake, you know, like cooking, vanilla cakes, now they have to make a chocolate cake. Oh, wow, you can't expect them to do that. Yeah, you can. Yeah, I bet they can do that. It's like asking bridge builders to build a dam. They're civil engineers. Yeah, exactly. And programmers make bricks. Developers put the bricks into something to make a house. It's 100% visual design team's fault. What I'm saying is that everything about this game was wrong. And trying to assign the blame to live service, I think, is reductive. Everything about this was just fucking terrible. Like, look at this. What is this? It was a failure with everything. Everything about it was bad. So, yeah. And that's what I think. A chocolate game would sell, and they could eat it, and they can't... They'd cry. Yeah. The core problem is what you said. It was just made to make money and not have creative interest. Yeah. And so, Suicide Squad is dead, and not a moment too soon.